Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Let me welcome you to The Takeout. The New World Order of tariffs is falling into place. President Trump contends this is a death knell, and a welcome one, he would argue, for a free trade regime that took root after World War II and knitted together previously disconnected and sometimes hostile nations into an informal global consortium, exchanging goods and services at prices that did not have to account for protective U.S. tariffs. That lack of protection, the president is convinced, deindustrialized America and hollowed out its ability to make products here. This amounted, the president argues, to a form of slow economic suicide. There's a lot of debate about that, but that's what he believes. The president's prescribed remedy, tariffs, well, that has been entering the U.S. and global economic bloodstream in small drips for months. It will now be mainlined with unknown consequences for jobs, prices, and new manufacturing. Inventories enlarged to dodge tariffs have largely been sold down. Job creation right now is tepid. And pledges of trillions of dollars in investment in America to sidestep tariffs, well, those are mostly press releases, at least for now. And of course, they are subject, as ever, to reevaluation. In late July, the Budget Lab at Yale University pegged the average U.S. tariff rate at 19.3%. The last time it was even double digits was 1970, when it was 10%. The average U.S. tariff rate hasn't been near 20% since 1948, when 1% of American households had a television, and a gallon of gas cost 26 cents. Those are bygone times, but the economic mindset that for decades preceded it, that tariffs meant economic protection and therefore economic vitality, even at the expense of conflicts, higher prices, and government favoring this industry or that company, well, that has come roaring back. Tariffs, first a shudder, now an economic roar, are here. And today is when they became more clear and more real than ever. To help us navigate this new landscape, we turn, as ever, gratefully, to Kelly O'Grady in New York. Kelly, take it away.
I know. I feel like, Major, we've been talking about this day. It is finally here. It was August 1st. Now it's August 7th. You know, I think the let's level set where we were, because we did have tariffs in place leading up to this, that pause while the negotiations or non-negotiations were happening. So you go from 10% on most countries to more, sometimes significant. And I think we have a chart that shows some of sort of the most interesting ones. The EU ramps up to a 15% tariff that was negotiated in a deal. South Korea and Japan also at 15% with a deal. You see India on there. 25% of that 50% went into effect today. Another 25% would come into effect in 3 weeks. That is because they are buying Russian oil. The president wants to use economic pressure to stop that, and a couple of others. But I think, how is this all going to impact you and me as consumers? It's really going to depend on how businesses deal with that. Are they going to be able to continue absorbing these tariff costs as we have seen them do in the past? And we have seen the result of that hitting companies' bottom line during earnings season. Or how much are they going to pass on to us?
And yesterday, the president said something I'd like you to help us evaluate, Kelly, that microchips not made in America would be subject to a tariff of up to 100%, if I have that correct. But if there was a pledge to build in the country, in our country, then they could sidestep that. But that, I learned today, has a lot of legal hurdles, and there may be exemptions in there. Very, very fuzzy.
It is. And this is a really interesting one. So just step back reminder, semiconductor chips, I mean, they are in everything from your electronics, your phone, to electric vehicles, to MRI equipment. And if you were to see a 100% tariff, you're right on that, those would likely go up in price, whether it's services or goods that you and me buy. The interesting thing, though, that the president said as he was standing next to Apple CEO Tim Cook, who was pledging more investment into the United States, is that if companies were going to make those chips here, and he argues it is for a national security reason, because they're a big driver of the AI industry, most of them are made in Taiwan right now, that these companies would not face a tariff. We don't have the specifics behind it. On the one hand, that's a really good way to beat out your competition if they aren't making those investments. And you can see some of the big ones on the screen that have committed to investing: NVIDIA, Samsung, TSMC. But on the flip side, Major, I do wonder what that means for those upstart companies, those startups that are trying to make it that aren't necessarily going to be able to pledge that investment. So you might see more market power consolidated into those bigger companies. But it is an interesting model. I've heard a lot of investors hope that that pledge could be transferred over to other industries like auto companies if they pledge to make investments here.
And then the question, who gains, who loses, and how much the government is controlling that outcome will loom very, very large. Kelly O'Grady, thank you so very much.